one of the things that I have again heard from many women that I have worked with is that हमारे पास time नहीं है. And especially as you go higher up and you enjoy the journey as much because it's not as if अच्छा अभी ये कर लिया अभी और कुछ करना है अभी और कुछ करना है. If you're enjoying what you're doing, और कुछ क्यों करना है? I mean, you can keep doing what you're doing so long as you're doing.
Hello, hi everyone. Welcome to the Pursuit of Finance Stories Beyond Numbers podcast. In this podcast, together with my co-host Tripti, we will take you through the world of finance. We will learn from the best in the industries who have done it all. Today, we have a very, very special guest. Shefali is a rank holder, gold medalist chartered accountant. She has more than 35 years of experience and she is the chairperson of Deloitte South Asia Board. I'm very happy to share she is the first woman chairperson of any governing board in Big Four in India. We are very proud of you, Shefali. I mean, you have expertise in international taxes and you have made difference in multiple companies, helping them to set up their either centers in India or helping them doing merger and acquisition. Your name has been in multiple awards, recognitions, and in magazines, in the who's who's of legal report. You are an inspiration to all of us, and we are very happy to have you along with us. Thank you, and welcome on board, Shefali.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much. Shefali, we want to know about real you. What's your background, about your growing up, and what's really motivated you to then start up or take up finance as a career?
So I'll get started, Nidhi. Again, a pleasure to be on your podcast and happy to be speaking to your audience through your medium. So I am a chartered accountant first. It didn't come naturally to me. Of course, I was a commerce student. But again, I've always had the dilemma, right? When you were growing up, whether, you go for commerce, you go for science, because at that time it was only arts, commerce, and science, the three streams that we had to choose from. And I had an admission both for commerce as well as science, and I opted for commerce. And that was my first step into the world of finance. But the journey had started off because even while I was in school in late years, I used to write books of accounts for my dad, for my father. And he had actually initiated me into it because I was always curious to know, and he used to sit and write the books. And I was always curious to know what is he doing and why is he doing. And he taught me how he was doing it. And then later on, I took over the first assignment from him to write the books of accounts. And then I got interested into it. So I chose commerce over science. And then I think it was just one step after the other. After I finished BCom, I think then the choice was whether to do CA or an MBA. Because again, the two choices besides law always was a third choice at that point. But I first applied for MBA. Oh. And again, as happens to many of us, what our friends do, we choose to do as well, right? So all of my friends were appearing for, the MBA entrance exam, so I also appeared for it. I did not really get a call from any of the IIMs, so it was a big disappointment for me. And the next thing I knew, my father went and, got a form for CA entrance exam. So that started me on the journey to CA. And I think then I think there was no turning back, because once I started doing CA, I started experimenting with different things. I did auditing for some time. I did tax for some time. I did some internal audits for a while. I've done stock audits as well. So it was quite interesting. And I always used to find tax very interesting. Because when I used to do a tax return for a client or do a tax advice for a client, it was always like solving a problem. And I thought that, between audit and tax, I preferred tax because it was like a new challenge every time and you were solving a new problem every time. And that kind of, pushed me into tax as a career. And of course, after I qualified as a chartered accountant, I then interviewed with all the big firms, and being a rank holder, you get invited to a lot of these interviews.
Yeah.
So, which gave me a good window of visibility into what each firm was doing. So I interviewed with some of the Indian firms. I interviewed with some of the big four firms at that time, and eventually I chose to work with Arthur Andersen at that time, and that started off my career in international tax. Because they were advising. That was just about the time when India had opened up its economy, so we were seeing a lot of liberalization policy and a lot of multinationals coming to India. So there was a lot of work being done around setting up operations in India. I got introduced to the world of tax treaties for the first time.
Wow.
So I learned a lot about tax treaties and how do you really interpret tax treaties. And I think that's where I started developing a lot more interest in the field of international tax. So I would pause there. Maybe you want to, go somewhere else till we come back to this track. But that is how my journey as a tax professional.
So the international tax was very new at that time, right? Were you scared, like that entering into a new field, which is like completely uncharted territory, or how was it? Because it's about catching on a train very early in your career, right? Getting into that was according to you, was the best at that moment. So how was it, Shefali? Uska kya aisa experience रहा आपका?
Right. So, Nidhi, I would say that I was never really scared because as a person, I like problem solving. So even
Okay.
in school, I was always like, very good at maths and science because this was more of a challenge for me. Even I used to enjoy even writing exams. So I think ये वो थोड़ा अजीब है लेकिन फिर भी है. So for me, if it was something which was unknown, that was always more of an attraction.
Wow.
So it was always, if it was not done before, I would always raise my hand and said, okay, I'll do it. Because that gave me an opportunity to read a lot on it, to do my research, to see how it was being done in some other countries. And through that, I would then, it was just knowledge building. And I don't think I was ever scared, but I was always interested. And I think that was also a way, that pulled me to it.
But the 35 years spending in one career, like, I mean, people early in the career, I have worked in Unilever for long. We always, have a discussion whether you want to become a specialist in a particular function or become a generalist. हमेशा mind में, चलता रहेगा. For 35 years specializing in international tax, what kept you going and going about this?
That's because I'm a lifetime student of international tax. So I never get tired of it. It's never the same thing for me. And I'm always learning something new. Interestingly, because international tax is a field which is constantly evolving. Like even today, if you see, because of the BEPS and Pillar 1, Pillar 2, there is so much that's changing around the world. So there is always something new to learn. So you never really get tired of it or bored with it. You're always learning. And I'm a self-acclaimed lifetime student of international tax. So I think that's what kept me going. And of course, it's all about passion, right? If you're passionate about something that you are learning, that you are doing as your work, then then there is no need to you keep changing. And you enjoy the journey as much because it's not as if अच्छा अभी ये कर लिया अभी और कुछ करना है अभी और कुछ करना है. If you're enjoying what you're doing, और कुछ क्यों करना है? I mean, you can keep doing what you're doing so long as you're doing it better, you're doing it differently, you are learning something from it, you are giving something back to the profession. So it's all a journey that keeps you going with it. And it's not just अच्छा भाग भाग के ये कर लिया अभी आगे जाके वो करेंगे. It's not like you have to check the box on all the destinations.
Yeah, I think the point which you mentioned about ना lifelong learning, ये एक बहुत important point है. Lifelong learning and lifelong contribution. The moment someone changes a role ना, if he feels कि उसकी learning खत्म हो गई, but for you international Texas and you were passionate about it, or you look kept on learning, and as you are learning even till now, I think that's what I pick up from this. If a particular opportunity, if I'm passionate about, I'm getting an opportunity to contribute and learn. I think that's where I can become a career for it. It's a very nice. So moving on further, you have like broken the glass ceiling. First woman, chairperson bane ho kisi big four ke India mein, and you have joined Deloitte some 7 8 years back only. So if I, just reflect and as an outsider, you must have faced a lot of competition from within the Deloitte group itself, or even challenges. But still you have come out and taken up this. So if you reflect upon your career, what were the skills which really helped you to becoming such a successful person in your career, Shefali? Like other than lifelong learning, आपको कौन से और skills को contribute करेंगे?
So lifelong learning is the number one skill.
Yeah.
I think that you will keep hearing throughout from me.
Yeah.
But if I have to move to the next thing, I would say networking.
Okay.
I think building your network is very important, and it starts from early stage, right? When you're in college, you don't recognize enough, but in your later years, the network that you build, even with the people that you are studying with, because you're spending so much of your time in your early days, right? It's important. Every job that you pass through, you have to look at it as how do I maximize my influence there, right? Now, I mean, it's easier said than done. I mean, हम सोच के तो नहीं चलते कि मुझे ये करना है, मुझे वो करना है. बाद में, I think in hindsight it is easy to say that, but the fact is that if you have an open mind, right, you are looking around, you are cognizant of the atmosphere you are in, the environment that you have, the ecosystem that you have around you, then you are more aware, and you will also be more open to reaching out to people, right? So let's say if you are doing articleship in a firm, in a CFO, then knowing who all are there, what are they doing, what is their specialization, what is that firm known in the market for, what type of clientele it has, reaching out to the client professionals that you are interacting with, and not just limiting to, okay, if you're doing an audit kar liya, khatam kiya, wapas aa gaye, ya tax return file kar diya, wapas aa gaye. But how do you really expand your network beyond? Even if you're going to the tax office for assessments or appeals, getting to know how they operate, what they are looking for. Many a times, you feel that, okay, they are looking for some help because some of the aspects, as professionals, we may be better equipped because we have more resources at our disposal. So how do we make sure that, we offer them something so that they also, look forward to interacting with you?
Yeah.
So these are the small tricks of networking that really help you a lot in your career. And one of the things that I have again heard from many women that I have worked with is that हमारे पास time नहीं है. And especially as you go higher up in your organizations, you are barely managing to finish your work, and then you want to rush back home, right? Because you also have a family at home and you want to devote time to your family. So there's always that classic dilemma of whether do I spend more time in office or outside the office networking, or do I go back home with my family? And I can say that, my experience is that you have to find time. I think, we are a bit more of a, we get good at juggling all the balls.
Yeah.
And there are times that, if you decide that let's say I want to set aside 2 hours every week for networking, you can do it. And you have to, of course, you will not do the same thing every time, but you can, do different things different times. But it is like, dedicated thing, right? The way you say that, okay, I will take out 2 hours to meet my friends every week. You can say that I will take out 2 hours to do my professional networking every week. And then see, you automatically you will make time for it. And I think it is very important that we do it, because that is how we will build our eminence. That is how we will build our outreach to our larger community. And that is what will keep you growing, because if you are well networked, you have your clients coming to you, you will succeed in whichever organization you are in.
Absolutely. I think ये important point जैसे I'm hearing from you बहुत later on most of us realize. I mean, initial years we were just focused on doing our work, going home. So ये आपने जो point बोला ना, even this was my learning. I mean, I learned through overhearing, and the moment I started focusing on networking, I saw the difference. I think the
Yeah.
point which you're mentioning, it is one of your one of the key skill which has contributed to your success. I think that's an amazing thing. And for listeners out there, networking is as important as doing the work, right? That's how it will help us in growing in the organization or in any organization for that.
Yeah. Very true. And it's not just to grow in the organization, right? Even when you are interacting with clients. So, early in my days, I was also very much an introvert, hardly, spoke much to people, just kept to my work. But as I was learning, and seeing how others are interacting with clients, I picked up a lot of things, including, just being more aware about, the client's context. If let's say the client is in consumer industry,
Yeah.
so what's happening in consumer industry, what is impacting their lives? Or let's say a client is in the US, and if they are going through elections, they are going through climate change, or if there is a big football match going on there. So just being aware of the small things, it gives you good way to connect with the clients in a more informal way, and that eases you into a more formal discussion.
Absolutely great. And if there is any other skill you would like to pick up, what would that be?
And if it's third skill, then I would say it would be entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And that is at the core. I think it is. There is this notion that if you are a professional, you are not a businessman or a businesswoman, and that is not correct.
Yeah.
I think having that entrepreneurship, even to start a professional service firm, you need that spirit of entrepreneurship, and that has to be there in everyone. Whether it is you are working in an industry, you are working in a professional service firm, you are working in consulting, anywhere, you need that spirit of entrepreneurship, because that keeps you alive.
Yeah.
You're more open to the opportunities in the market. You know how you're running your business, right? So you very much can see that, okay, if this is the expenses I would have, this is the income I would need to generate, and what is going to help me generate that income, and how can I earn enough and more so that I'm able to distribute more of that. It's a little bit of risk taking appetite as well, so that you're not always looking for a cozy comfortable job which is going to give you an assured check in hand. You have to learn to take risks, so that you are experimenting, you are pushing yourself to do more, and it actually really helps you achieve your true potential, because it's not always that you have people who will be there to kind of help you pull up.
Yeah.
Right, many times you have to do it for yourself. That, okay, I know, I mean, if this does not work, this is my plan B. I can always go back and earn this much. But if I took this chance, and if there is a 50% chance that this venture would work, then I could earn that much more. So I think that risk taking is also a very important skill.
Absolutely. That's a wonderful answer, Shefali. If we take it further and say if someone, people who are looking to build up their careers and they want to go into a very higher up positions within big fours, what would be their advice? Like, according to you, these three skills, of course, will help them. But if there is anything that they should do more of, or they do even, they should do less of, what would be their advice as they want to, build up a career as exciting or successful as yours?
I would, I think in a big four world again, it's different thing for everybody. It's not the same way, because it's not, there's no set formula that if you do so and so things that you will reach a certain position. because it is a combination of a lot of things, right? Each organization has its own nuances, how it is organized, how it is structured, who are the other senior people who are there, who are available for the roles. But what I would like to say is that if you're working in a larger firm, it doesn't have to be only a big four.
Yeah.
Even an Indian larger firm,
Sure.
I think, the larger the firm, there are different types of challenges, because in a smaller firm, everybody, firsthand, and therefore, it's easy. They would also know what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and it's easier to work with. In a larger firm, it's always more difficult because there are more people to compete with you,
Yeah.
and not everybody would know, what you are good at. So you have to work a little extra hard to kind of project or convey to others what is it that you like doing or what you are good at. So this takes us back to the topic of being generalist and specialist.
Yeah.
I think many of us, in the early days when we started our accounting, we were more of generalists, right? Earlier, every firm used to do everything. So all of us growing up did everything. It was never, I mean, smaller firms, you had an opportunity to really learn everything before you decided what you wanted to do going forward as a career. And I feel that gets actually diluted a bit when you start off in a big four, because of the nature of work, most of the big four firms would then take you in one department, and in most cases you would then continue to rise further in the same department.
Yeah.
And but I feel that if you have an opportunity, if not through the department, but do take up projects which expose you to the wider areas of business, because that really opens up your perspectives. It gives you a more holistic view to problem solving. If you're talking to a client, then you will not only talk from an audit or a tax or a consulting perspective, but you would talk from a more holistic perspective and a business perspective. And the clients these days do value that a lot more than just a professional advice on something. So trying to get a little wider knowledge base, and raising hand, right? Raising hand for anything that comes up. Depending again on how much of time you have, is also important, because generally, and I've seen that this is more of a dilemma for women again. They would say that, okay, I barely have time to do my professional work. So any other work, any managerial work, I would then not raise my hand for. And I would say that, this is something that we need to be a little more open to. If we take up some management responsibilities early on, then that again gives you an exposure to a wider set of people within your organization, and they can sense your skill set far earlier. And I think many of the organizations do have a structured program on leadership training and coaching, right? So you get identified early on, you get coached for certain leadership roles, more chances that you will reach your top positions very soon in your organizations. So I think that helps a bit.
Oh, these are wonderful advices. Being open to, raise hands for new projects in someone else's team, or even, taking the coaching which you are sharing, the coaching and mentorship in leadership. I think all of these will help someone rising in the Big Four. Coming on to a fun question for you. You talked about the skills which were responsible for your success, but if there is any superpower which you can have for yourself, what would you choose?
Superpower. I can do with a lot of superpowers, actually. But I would say that, so again, a challenge, right? So all of us, and, many of us, especially for women, uh, if they can replicate themselves and be at multiple places at the same time, I think that is one superpower that I would really love to have. Because I often feel that, okay, because of the work, you're not able to spend enough time with your family, and sometimes you're with your children, sometimes it is with your husband, sometimes you just want to attend a seminar somewhere, you want to attend a client, event. So you feel that, okay, you only have that much of working hours. and you can only do that many things. So you have to prioritize, right? Which means that, okay, while you could have studied for something else and you could have, done a client engagement, but if you could replicate yourself for some time, you could do so many things.
Wow, that's amazing having clones. It will be wonderful to have Shefali so many clones of yours. I mean, Deloitte will be so amazingly happy. Great. So, if you see your past and if there is any life changing experience which you would like to share, like what was it and how did it change your thinking or perspective, either in life itself, yeah, about the work? Is there anything you would like to
So, Nidhi, I would talk about two things there. One, I think early in my career, especially when I started my family, when my children were growing up and they were still very young, I always had, I went through a lot of guilt complex.
share?
And I used to think that, whether should I quit my job for some time? Should I stay at home? Should I go part time so that I should be spending more time with my children? I should be there for them when they come back from school.
Yeah.
And being conditioned like that socially, I think that's a guilt that many of us do go through. And every year I used to go and talk to my boss at that time and saying, okay, I would like to, take it easy. I don't want to work because I want to spend more time with the family. And he would just simply say that, no, take as much time as you want. Yeah, I mean, and this was all the time when we did not have any official work from home, which is now so popular. And that kind of put the monkey back on me to say that, okay, he's saying, go back, take as much time, but then come back when you're done.
Yeah.
So I had that mental freedom that, okay, if I chose, I had that opportunity to quit my work and be at home. Or I could keep juggling the two and see how far I'm able to reach. So keep balancing between the professional life and the personal life. And getting that support early on in my career to stay with it helped me a lot. And that actually pivoted my thinking to say that, why must I have only one and not both? So it trained me into better time management, learning to prioritize, and also, training myself into thinking that it is okay not to have everything. I cannot have it all. I cannot be with my family. I cannot be with my friends, and I cannot always also be in my office. So I will always have to give up on something. But so long as I keep rotating, I think it is okay for me to do that. And that was a big learning for me. I also got coaching from a mentor at that point who told me that I must stay with or take up the leadership roles or managerial roles as and when they come up. So never turn them down. Find ways how to delegate, but keep doing this managerial or leadership roles because that will keep you rising in the organization. And that was again a very, very important piece of advice that I have received in my career, and I have imparted the same to many of the women that I have coached. And the second thing that pivoted in my life is the switching the track from tax to governance. This is again just 1 year old for me because my governance role is also 1 year old. But that was a big switch. Being in tax for 35 years, for me to completely switch the tracks and go into governance was a big, big learning experience for me because I was, starting again from, scratch, learning all the ropes of governance and in a big four world. So very different experience, but very, very humbling.
And in fact, I am looking for it, and most of the people are looking for and really looking for your contribution. And these are like these incidents have really influenced how you have grown up. And I think you were lucky to had a very good boss who supported you back at that time. I wish, and listeners out there, I wish that all of us have that empathy, and either it's men or women. If our teams need us, being there with them, supporting them, and helping them to come out of that problem situation. I think that is really an amazing. So, Shefali, the another fun question for you. If you get a chance to have a dinner with any financial personality, what, which personality you would choose, and what would you ask them?
Dinner with a. Um, so I've always been fascinated by the game theory.
Hmm.
If you're aware of John Nash, was a scientist who kind of developed and propounded this game theory,
Yeah.
which is now viewed as a fundamental and very instrumental in helping with a lot of things. It solves a lot of problems. It's also it's very helpful in decision making
Yeah.
and or negotiation in negotiations. So maybe if I had an opportunity to meet with John Nash and see what went on, I mean, he was of course a very different type of personality,
Hmm.
but how we can use that game theory
Hmm.
and see how we can really deploy the potential of game theory in the context of further propounding this artificial intelligence or how to deal with climate change and how to negotiate with countries and bring them on the table for solving climate change problems.
Yeah.
That would be interesting.
Wow, I wish you have that. I really like that response. Great. On this note, I would like to call my beautiful co host Tripti for taking further this session.
Hi, so Shafali, I was listening to you. It was and the conversation. I loved the part where you said about the networking, and I've been really and the mentor aspect. It is so crucial for specifically from the women's side because I have realized one thing working with Big Four, the big challenge is as soon as you're a senior manager or a manager, because you're supposed to do the business development part as well as a part of your appraisal, it's become equally important. And then you realize all of a sudden why network was so important. Why is that, the relationship which you maintain over the period of time, and you actually emphasize on the reason that when you're going to a client, it's not just about doing the work, it's also about creating that relationship which can come long way. So with this, I would really thank you for highlighting so important aspect, and you're going out of the comfort zone from tax to governance, like you said. It is wonderful. With this, my one of my favorite question is your going back to your articleship time. I think I would love to hear your experience and what is the relevance of doing articleship as a chartered accountant. How much weightage do you give into it?
I think it is very important. So chartered accounting is one profession where it's a lot of self study, right? Because I mean, we used to just pick up the study material from the institute and self study for the exams. And whatever you're learning, it's all on the job, and you can only learn while doing your articleship, which means that joining any audit team as a junior, see how the audit is being done, how your seniors are looking at the balance sheets or the financial statements of the clients, and how are they preparing the report, how are they negotiating or how are they discussing on the identified problems. I think it's a lot of things that you learn while just observing, and that you can do only in when you are in this articleship or an internship kind of training, because it is very experimental. It lets you learn. There is very little expectation. Nobody expects that you would know it all, right? You are only expected. You are told what is a problem and how to go about it, and then you can use your creativity to find solutions, to look up the case laws, come up with an argument that can be taken up for any tax planning or tax appeals. So I think I would give a lot of weightage to doing the internship. And Tripti, the new system that we have about everybody finishing their internship for the first 2 years, and then taking 6 months to study for the exam, and then appearing for an exam, and then really starting a job. I think that's a fantastic arrangement, Because earlier that was always the thing that, okay, while you are studying, then you also have to give your exam, and then you are also, in your internship. So it is difficult to multitask at that stage. So just focusing on your internship, then studying, then appearing for your exam, I think that's a very good arrangement. It really lets you give your 100% to everything that you're doing.
So, do you feel now, since with the new course, Shefali, the period of articleship has drastically reduced? It's almost 2 years, and it was initially 3 years. Do you feel this is beneficial, or is it good for the system and for the chartered accountant?
I think it is beneficial because for the students, I think it lets them focus on the exam, right, when they have to, without having to worry about but what's going on the assignments that they were working on. So it really lets them focus on the study. Even for the CA firms that are hiring interns, this is a good arrangement because they know that they have, there is no breakup in the period. When they have them for a period of 2 years. I think the only drawback that I see is that 2 years may not be sufficient for students to make a choice as to what do they want to do going forward. But I would say that it gives you a good window of visibility as to what is it that you really like, or you have inclination for, and you start with that. And otherwise, if you're joining a big firm, you can certainly look for a rotation, so that it lets you experiment with different businesses before you decide what is the career of choice for you. But I think overall it is a better arrangement than before.
Okay, so I think one thing is for sure that articleship is something very very relevant for, and that teaches us the most important aspect of how to deal with people, how to interact with people, which is somewhere is missing in our course. And so that leads to my second question, Shafali, is you know when we meet so talented chartered accountant, technically so sound, somehow we see the gap of the intellectualness, the ability to communicate better. What is your recommendation to overall finance expert, because you have seen how much it takes to be in the room, in the big room, interacting, giving across your ideas. So what is that it takes to be a chartered accountant, a MBA, or a finance career person to be highlighted in the room than just a technical knowledge?
So I think one, of course, is what is the substance, and then the other is what is the form. I think nobody doubts that chartered accountancy trains us all very well on the technical front. In the field of finance, I think we are the experts. I think most of our clients really turn to us for everything, right? I mean, and we really get into some of the very complex engagements and solve a lot of problems for them. I think where we sometimes miss out is the communication skills. And I think now, of course, the institute has also instituted this, a training, right? There is an integrated course that the students are required to do, which is a combined one on IT and soft skills, which trains you for some of these aspects, right? On the communication skills, presentation skills. I think that's helpful because it's a good orientation to have. And many large firms also have a good onboarding program. So there are a lot of courses that you can take up, which can really open up that side of your personality. And the rest, I would say, is all, you have to just keep yourself, motivated to do things even beyond your comfort zone, right? Even if you're not comfortable presenting to a room full of people, I think just keep doing it. The more you do it, the better you get at it, right? And more comfortable and confident you would feel. And there are so many opportunities. We have Institute of Chartered Accountants, we have, Chamber of Income Tax Consultants, Bombay Chartered Accountants Society. There are so many study groups. If you join a study group, just take that initiative to say that, okay, I will study this topic. I will then present to the rest of the group on this topic. And that doesn't mean that you have to present slides, or you have to stand up and speak, but to take that leadership, right? Which means that first you have to learn, you have to, then be comfortable to lead that discussion. And that itself is a good way to develop your personalities. So it can begin in a very small way, but you can apply it in all aspects of your life.
So well said, Shefali. And I remember we were discussing some time back with you about, women at workforce and the recent report which Deloitte has come up with. And since I've been working as founder for Women of Later, I've realized that when it comes to women, there are different aspect of challenge which the report has beautifully covered, and you've covered like 5,000 people in the report from across the world. What are the key takeaways? What would you or learning which you would like to share with us, Pali?
So, a few big takeaways from that report, Tripti, and this is something that it was a big eye opener for us. I think we are all used to saying that, at the entry level, we have almost 50% in most organizations. We have almost half of the workforce as women, especially in the field of chartered accountancy, because many women take up as CA as a profession. But as they keep rising in the organization, I think, by the time they become manager or senior managers, many of them then start, on their personal side, they, either get married, they have family, and that distracts them from their careers. COVID times, when, a lot of them had to deal with this home responsibilities as well as office responsibilities, I think many of them dropped off from the working force. And almost 30 to 40% of the women that we had interviewed for this report did say that, they would not like to continue working, or that they would like to reduce their working hours, because they were just finding it so difficult to keep up with the same level of commitment for their work as well as to keep up with their home commitment. And I think in a country like ours, there is still a lot of social conditioning that, for women, I think family comes first, home duties come first. Whether it is attending to, ailing parents, or taking care of children, or following the husband wherever his work is, I think that takes a priority over woman's own, career. And that itself, puts a lot of mental burden. Many women came back and reported mental well-being as a big challenge that they were facing during and after the COVID times, because they were going through a lot of churn within themselves as to what do you really prioritize, how do you really do you serve dinner on the table versus attend and complete a client engagement that you have committed to. So I think a little more help in building that social infrastructure around you. I think that really helps. Also, women did complain a lot about not really having the full knowledge to be financially independent. So whether, where do you make your investments, where do you open up your bank accounts, insurance policies, there is not enough awareness and involvement of women in these type of decisions. And therefore they feel underconfident that, left to themselves, whether can they be financially independent or not. So putting some of those infrastructure support around women would help women stay in the workforce for a longer time. And if they remain in the workforce, there is no doubt they would reach the leadership positions. Today, this is one of the biggest challenges why many organizations don't have women at the top, sufficient number of women at the top, because we just don't have sufficient number of women in the pipeline.
So true, Shefali. I think I would second every word you've said. I would like to ask how you did it so differently. I mean, it's so difficult to find someone who has made, because I have seen people dropping out after senior manager as women to continue in Big Four. It's not only women but men as well. But of course, for women most of the time, like you already showed the statistics. So, how did you do differently? What did you do differently as compared to others?
So I would say that it was not that me doing differently. I think, I probably was lucky enough to just be present at the right place at the right time and had the support of the right type of mentors. There were many men in my life that really kept me going. I've already spoken about, the bosses that I worked with, the mentors that I had. Um, I also had a big support from my husband, who always saw me as equal, right? And he also, equally lent hands in, whenever it came to raising our children, that so that, it never felt that we were really missing out on anything. So if I was not able to drop them to school, he would go and drop them to school. Or if, somebody had to attend or take somebody to, through the doctor, he would be there to take care of that. Or if there was not enough, there was no cook at home, something had to be cooked up, he would say that, okay, let's figure out what to make for dinner. And that's a big motivator, because that sees that, okay, my work is no less. It's equally important, and I had enough support from all of my family members, as well as people at work. And I would say that it is really our responsibility to pay it forward, right? As be it men or be it women, everybody needs help. I have done the same thing for many men in my team. Whenever they needed support to take time off to be with their children who were sick, so that their wives could attend to work. It's just about being more empathetic, being more aware, being providing them that level of comfort that, okay, don't worry, if you need to be at home with your child, go, I will take care of it, I'll take care of the work commitment. So I think stepping in, stepping out is a very, very important skill set for the leaders. So that,
So true.
any gap that gets created, they think and they are able to step in to fill up that gap. So that, nobody misses out on anything and everybody keeps rising.
I think, Shefali, you have made it so swift and soft when you're sharing all this. It's not easy. Every leader who is there at your position, I think, has gone through a lot of setback and challenges. How did you overcome? And I'm sure you must have faced those challenges too. It must have not been so easy, it sounds like. So would you like to share a few of your challenges, and during those set of setbacks, how did you overcome those? What kept you going?
So I would say challenges is more about, there will always be challenges, right? I mean, what is life if there are not enough challenges? People would get bored with it. So it's good to have challenges in life. But what is important is to have your principles, core principles and values intact. Because if you know what you have to do in life, somehow it will keep you going. So the values that I lived by, right? I mean, my father was instrumental in teaching some of that. When I used to write the books of accounts for him, he would pay something. And I would tell him, but I'm your daughter, I can do it for you in my free time. Why do you want to pay me for it? And he said, no. I said, if I pay you for it, you will value that as a job. You will do it more diligently. It will become, it's more of a discipline and a compulsion. And it also, it taught me to value my time, which means that, even howsoever minimal, but if I was being paid for it, I knew that I had to do a good job of it. It was not just a hobby or something that I was doing in my, free time. And I always lived by that principle that my work was valuable. And I had to realize the worth of my work, which means that if I was working for something that was not giving enough worth for it, then either I had to up my game and do something better, or I had to find something else to do. Because it was not worth for me to stay in a job that was not really paying me my worth. So valuing your time and asking for what you are worth for, I think that those were the two important lessons that I learned. And I've taught that again to many of my mentees, to say that every time, and this is something women don't do enough. They don't always ask for what they believe they are really worth. Either it is assigning yourself to a job sometimes, because it is always assumed, right, that the women will not want to travel, that they may not want to do it. And I've always said that if you think that you want to do something, then raise your hand and ask for it. If you don't ask for it, you will not get it. So,
Right.
Don't always count on other people to do the good job, right? Or to do the right thing. Sometimes if you don't see it happen, stand up for yourself and ask for it.
So, Shefali, do you think with the changes in after COVID, because during COVID, a lot of people were working from home, a lot of pressure for women. But on the other side, working from home, I've come across because being working with women and working on leadership, I've seen that has actually been advantageous to them. Do you think working from home has really helped, or is it otherwise for women?
So I think, it is like a hybrid working, which is a more ideal thing. I don't think only working from home helps anybody. Because, while yes, it may give you that freedom and flexibility to deal with your home duties for a while, which is good. But, you miss out on a very important part, which is, the actual human interaction. And I've seen a lot of women wanting to get out of the house and be in their office, be on their desk where they are, comfortable. They can switch off, what's happening at home, whether somebody else is ringing the doorbell or, a child needs attention. Because then they can focus on it. Because while we all love multitasking, but to do that full justice to something and be present there and now, I think you need sometimes to be away from the clutter. And I think, having a little bit of flexibility to sometimes work from home, but be also be present in the office for interactions with the teams, for interactions with the clients. I think that is very valuable. And I would not really undermine the importance of that.
Thank you so much. I think that's so relevant. A lot of people are preferring and talks about whether it's men and women work from home. I know it saves a lot of travel time, but I think it is so important to understand the human touch and the interaction you enjoy. Because I still remember when I was working with PwC and I was working with the due diligence, when I used to see Bharti Ramola sitting in a cabin, it used to motivate me so much that yes, there is a woman who is a head of due diligence and mergers and acquisition, and that's the toughest field to be. And you are another example, Shefali, I see, who has made it to the next level. So, with this, I would like to go on a lighter question on, any book or a movie which inspired you and which you would like to reflect upon to our audience.
Movie. Well, I see a lot of movies. I mean, I experiment with a lot of content. But I would say that one movie that I really enjoyed, just for the fun of it, was Queen. Because again, it is, where there is this a girl from a small town who is not ambitious. The social conditioning is that yes, I have to get married, find a nice guy, get married, get settled, attend the kitty parties, be present at home, uh, and then something really changes in her life, and she pivots into a very different personality. She starts, really exploring her potential in different circumstances. She was very stubborn, of course, but she had a goal. She decided she wanted to go somewhere. She will go on her own. And, somebody who had never stepped out on her own, but to be able to do that takes a lot of courage. And then, having that courage and conviction to do something different from what you have done in the past, I think that was a big a learning lesson for me, that you can do it. Anybody can do it. Anybody, howsoever your circumstances might be, कहाँ से भी आप आए, कोई भी गांव, village, anything, any city, but you can always have an ambition. And if you have an ambition to do something, then you just have to find the right channels. With the right channels, you can achieve your ambition. Because hard work is, something that everybody can do, right? It's up to us to how much effort we are putting into something to pursue our goal, pursue our passion. But having that ambition is the most important thing. And I think,
I think I
any
really love.
event can really help you with that.
Sorry. So I really love the part which you highlighted. It is so deep. The way we are conditioned to go for not being ambitious, and then all of a sudden, when we realize our real worth and we are on a track, you are somehow being notified as an ambitious woman all of a sudden. Somebody who didn't have any ambition. And then the circumstances have led you to an ambitious person. You're always told you are an ambitious person who is avoiding few of the things which maybe, you are titled that way. I would really highlight this point that when you've been called that way, uh, don't worry about it, because there will always be something to be spoken about against you or to make you feel
Right.
uncomfortable. Thank you so much, Shefali. And with this, I would like to, talk about, um, a very off the track question. Imagine you've been asked to go to a forest right away. It's kind of emergency. And you're asked to take only two things. What would that be, Shefali?
Asked
You
to
can
go to
only pick two.
forest, did you say? Did you?
Yes. Yeah.
I would say a book. I mean, a book any day. Because a book anywhere, anytime. I'm a big time fan of reading. And a phone. Without a phone, you can't go anywhere. A book and a phone. Those are the two things I would love to take.
Wow. Okay. So that shows about you that even with this, you're very focused that you cannot miss your work for sure. And Shefali, we've been speaking about mental importance, mental well-being importance. I see you. You're completely fit, very well maintained, and I mean, you don't look the position you hold. You look so young to be there. So, what is like your daily routine? What keeps you so bright, smiling, on the top of it?
So I think, keeping fit is now the number one priority. And that is something that at Deloitte, we keep telling, all of our colleagues that, you have to devote time to your physical fitness because your physical fitness comes first, the mental fitness is the next. Physically, if you have to make time for exercise, which means that there cannot be excuses forever, right? The first thing I do, the minute I'm able to open my eyes, I just like put on my shoes and I'm out of my house. I either walk for an hour or I go to the gym and work out for an hour, or I'm doing yoga. But one of the three things is a must for me, and then eating right, because I think of course age is catching up with everybody. There is a lot more awareness now about the nutritional values, and now I have my boys who are like keeping me in check. Every day I have to report to them how much of protein I've had for the day. So all of that also keeps my nutritional kind of goal in sight. And then having a balanced day, right? You have your work, but you also have your life which is beyond your work. The howsoever you enjoy your work, but you cannot ignore the other side of your life. So long as you are spending the time to maybe make a quick phone call to my mother on the way to work, saying okay, how's the day been, what has happened, catching up with my children, who are now who live in the US, as to how was their day, what have they had for dinner. So it's just the small little things which helps me catch up with what's going on in their lives, and then reading newspapers so that I know what's going on in the world and what do I need to do. Who do I need to call next? To get that new engagement, catching up with my team to see what's going on and what is lined up for the day, and having quiet dinner with my husband. I think that's also very relaxing. Catching up on some OTT in the night, I think that kind of rounds up my day to a very well
Wow.
balanced do it all kind of day.
I think that's aspirational. I think you've covered so beautifully, so important aspect of life. And thank you for going on record and saying OTT, which people think, I think it relaxes you so much. I can't sleep without ending my day because you have so much on your table. You just want to stop thinking.
Yes.
So it is so relevant. You learn a lot from all these things too, if you see the other side. With this, I would like to bring to a last question, Shefali. It was so interesting that I don't like to bring this to an end, but and like I said, and you have already quoted that how important it is to have a mentor and how they have helped and shaped up your life. I would like you to call upon few of the mentors' name if you can. so that we can thank you on your behalf too, because today we are sitting with you here because some people in your life have mentored you and pushed you to be where you are, and we take this responsibility to thank them on your behalf. So if you would like to share.
Yeah. So on the personal level, I would say my father, who was my first mentor, and bless his soul, I think he really brought me into the world of finance and accounts, right? And I get a lot of my discipline from him. My husband and my sons, who are my pillars of support, anytime, anywhere, anything that I need to do. Sometimes if I'm nervous, I just call my children and say, what do you think, can I do this? And they immediately will say, okay mom, you've got this, don't worry about it. You can go for it. So that gives me a lot of reassurance and confidence. In my work career, my first boss, Dilip Shah, he runs a firm where I did my articleship, and he was my first boss who really showed me how to do networking and introduced me to the world of CA. What does a typical CA do in his life? And he is a great, supporter. I learned a lot of networking from him. Uh, my first true mentor would be Nishit Desai, where he runs a law firm, and I, worked with him, where I learned a lot of things about how a true professional can build his practice. And he really taught me how to go out into the world without any big banner and build your client base. How a true professional should really present himself, to do a lot of research, build your domain expertise, do a lot of article writing, do a lot of speaking, and just approaching clients and building your new client base from time to time, taking a lot of risks in your professional career. I think all of this I've learned from him. And another mentor would be Professor Roy Rohatgi, who was also a mentor for me, and who taught me that, okay, how you should not, how you should learn to delegate more and still keep doing your managerial roles. I think that was a big lesson that I'd learned from him. So these are the people I would like to acknowledge. Thank you for that.
I think you've beautifully covered the importance of networking again, going out in the world as a woman and making your own clients and being there. And like, I would really thank the family members who've been great support. And we have such a wonderful experience interacting with you, Shefali, today. And special thank to Dilip Shah and Nishit Desai. Of course, he's an inspiration to so many. And you've been mentored by him. It's amazing to be under his guidance, and Professor Rao for sure. With this, thank you so much, and I hope all our audience have learned so much today. It was one of the very, very interesting podcasts we could do together, and I'm sure we are looking forward for more and more interactions like this. So keep watching for the next episode in the meanwhile. Thanks, everyone. Thanks a lot.